Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining our lunch and learn session. I believe some vouchers will be on the way and hitting your email boxes intermittently. First of all, I would like to just give a brief overview of why Blue Turtle decided to partner with, or have partnered with NNT over the last couple of years, and where we saw a gap in the market and saw some value, which the NNT technology specifically fulfills. Essentially, we were at Blue Turtle, being a primary provider of service desk software, particularly BMC, the BMC Remedy platform. We identified a gap in the market, from a configuration drift management perspective, in terms of identifying change across infrastructure and being able to notify of that change real time. What NNT brought to the party for us was not being able to identify that change across platforms, but also gave us the ability to track those changes, and B, identify who made those changes in real time. The upsell to doing that was gave us the ability to take those changes from a change tracking perspective and log them into our service desk. And it doesn't necessarily have to be BMC Remedy. It could be ServiceNow, BMC Remedy, or any of the major platforms. And NNT gave us a platform to do that. We've been working quite closely with NNT over the last couple of years, which has been quite a fruitful relationship in terms of our go-to markets and bringing customers up to speed from a configuration management perspective. We have on the call with us today two panelists, which is Amar Singh, who's the CEO of CISO, and essentially he's a trusted advisor in the security and privacy space. And then we have Mark Ketchley, who's the CTO at New Network Technologies, who's going to be running through the lunch and learn for us. I hope you guys find this informative and incisive. We'll take some questions towards the end, and look forward to chatting to you after that. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Mark and Amar. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Well, I think you're up first, Amar, so I'll make you presenter, and the floor will be yours, yes?
Okay, thank you. Hello, right. Everyone. Okay, I should be showing my screen, and I'll just go into presenter mode. Click double. Okay, welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. In the UK, it's really, really warm, but thank you for joining. Building cyber resilience through effective change management. I found this image we pay for images, and I really found this very interesting. And why are we here today? I'm going to share some insights. I'll talk a little bit about myself. I'm the guy with the blue turban. It's not blue in this picture. It's a black and white gray photo. But if you do connect with me on LinkedIn, you will see that's the only color I wear. I'm a practitioner, although I'm the CEO of Cyber Management Alliance. I'm a global CISO. I've worked for very large organizations. We still are trusted advisors. And what do we provide advice on is how do you remain cyber resilient? How do you make sure that you can still survive, you can still stay afloat before, during, and after a cyber attack? And I think all of you know we could spend several days on the number of cyber attacks that are going on. Very briefly, a quick talk about what we do is we've trained over one of our kind of flagship things we do is training and workshops in incident planning and response. And what you see here is that this particular course is certified by the UK government, National Cyber Security Center. It has an e-learning version where you don't have to listen to my voice, and we have a virtual classroom option where you can listen to me and ask me specific questions. You can find out more on our website, which is alliance.com. And I'll go straight into what we are talking about today. So I don't think anyone needs any introduction, but the reality is we are in massively dangerous times, massively interesting times, and very importantly, massively weird times when it comes to cyber and cyberspace and cyber attacks. Why do I say all of this? Because please remember and take this keyword down, everybody, okay? Please. The velocity of infection. The velocity of infection of cyber attacks, of ransomware, of malware is one of the biggest dangers to your business. It is not the cyber criminals. Cyber criminals have been around for very long, but more and more ransomware, more and more software that these criminals are developing is becoming so dangerous, and these criminals are becoming much more advanced. They're learning, access is better, 5G, etc. All of that put together, the danger that it poses to the organization is of absolute inability to respond. Okay, I will highlight a few cases which you can read about. TravelX is one company you should know about. They ended up paying ransom. They are now filing for bankruptcy. Okay, there's one organization in the UK, in the US, that has recently paid ransom through an intermediary, £4 million ransom, because these attackers, their primary objective is how do they rapidly destroy your business. Okay, and what we are going to talk about, what we are already talking about, is how the question is, can you stay ahead of the cyber criminal? I get that asked a lot. I talk to a lot of CEOs, CFOs, and my answer is yes, if you listen to what I have to say. And the title of this topic, the title of this particular webinar, which is change management. And this is not about, CAB meetings. This is not about everyone agreeing, let's make a change, roll. No. What we are going to talk about is actually why is it so important to know what has changed. But before we go there, I want you to focus on two things. For your own business that you are operating, regardless of your location, this is a particular South African market that we are talking to, and we deal in pretty much all markets globally. My advice to each one of you is focus on rapid detection and rapid response, not real-time detection. Okay, so one more takeaway for all of you. Stop focusing on real-time detection. Near real-time, rapid detection, and then the ability to rapidly respond. Now, what does rapid detection actually mean? And this is what we're building up on. But remember, one of your strategies must focus on rapid detection. Now, before I get into the details, there's a little bit of good news. And that good news for you is actually criminals fail much more than they succeed. Okay? Absolutely critical for you to remember that. However, you know what? They keep trying until they succeed. This is one absolute important, brilliant attribute of cyber criminals, is they do not give up. They simply do not give up. And the question you have to ask yourself is, are you able to rapidly detect a malicious activity? Please write that down, everybody. Are you able to rapidly detect a malicious activity? Now, Everyone may have heard of the word false positives. And this is something we are going to also talk about, we are talking about right now. Are you able to rapidly detect real attempts, real malicious activity, not false positives? In our research, when we work with clients, we do a lot of assessments on their incident response readiness. A significant proportion of the analyst time is spent with false positives. Okay, they're looking at something which may be an alert, but it is actually not an alert. And this takes up a significant amount of time, people. Don't underestimate the loss of time. We only have 24 hours on planet Earth a day. And the analyst that you have employed is spending most of their time looking at useless stuff. They cannot catch the criminal that is entering your organization because majority of the time he or she is spending their time looking at false positives. They're not focusing on what is good malicious activity or confirmed malicious activity. Now, let's take a quick 1 minute, if you don't mind, and let's look at what is the difference here, folks, okay? So if you look on the screen right now, and it's a really important exercise. I mean, we won't spend too much time. I know this can get very, very intensive, and you will start pointing out maybe more than 6 differences. But this particular topic, can you detect accurately changes in your systems, in your critical systems? Not false positives. I'm not talking of false changes. I'm talking about the real changes. That's the question you've got to ask yourself. You may already have software that you think does it, but the question you have to ask, does it do it very quickly? But more importantly, does it do it accurately? As you can see, the difference here, you got 6, 1, the sheep, the donkey, I think, the horse, etc., etc. So there are 6 highlighted differences. It's a bit of a fun take at this, but it is an absolutely really important topic, folks. If you don't know what has changed in your organization, right? If you do not know what has changed rapidly enough, not 6 months down the road, but if you don't know what file, what access, what attribute has changed, you are not going to be able to rapidly detect malicious activity. And we have very interesting discussions later on about NNT and how that does it. I've used it myself. But the key focus of this is you've got to focus on rapidly knowing what has changed, okay? If you don't know what has changed, you're not going to be able, and here, I'm going to make a statement here, everybody. Please listen very carefully. It's a slightly simplified statement, but for an attacker to succeed, okay? Remember, if an attacker doesn't succeed, you do not have to worry. Am I right? Yeah? If an attacker does not succeed in attacking your business, you have nothing to worry. But for an attacker to succeed in damaging your business, in encrypting all your software, all your data, something has to change. A file, a DLL, something has to change. And you and your strategy must be, how do we detect unauthorized changes? Not just in operating system, in application, in data, etc., in critical files, real time. What has changed? If you don't know what has changed, you are not going to be able to detect early signs of malicious activity. Let me give you some examples, okay? And this, again, remember, we work with many companies during a cyber attack. Yeah, you can call on us if you want. We also have the CIPR course. But during a cyber attack, I can tell you in many cases, I can't tell you the customer name, obviously, 2018, a massive cyber attack, and guess what? There were no damages, interestingly, but during the golden hour is what we call, it's nothing gold about it, but during the cyber attack, one of the IT folks made a change, made actually 2 or 3 changes, one on the firewall, one on a critical system, because he thought at that time it was important to make those changes. Those changes were not logged. No one knew that those changes were made. These changes were made ad hoc because the IT guy was deeply experienced, so he knew what to do. And as always, none of those changes were recorded. No one knew those changes were made. And in 2019, they were hacked again because of those legitimate changes. The guy who made the change made it for good reasons, but he made it in a rush. He did not log those changes, and there were no systems picking up those changes. Okay, he made some configuration changes to some files, etc., etc. Why is this important? Because change management is, and what we're going to give you a demo, maybe we're going to talk about the importance of it, but this is what I'm trying to explain to you. If you don't know what's changing, especially during a cyber attack, if you don't know what attackers are changing when they land on your system, okay? Patch management is very important, folks, but when a criminal exploits a system, guess what? Something has to change for that exploit to succeed. And what you need to ask is, are you accurately going to detect that change, that unauthorized change? If you can have a working system that tells you of unauthorized, illegal, suspicious changes that are not false positives, that are accurate, unauthorized changes, you are going to be one step ahead of the criminals. I'm going to close by saying one thing very important. Remember, if you allow the criminal to succeed, if you don't know what has changed, guess what? The attacker is going to become permanent in your organization. Permanent means they will have full access. And that is the biggest danger to your business. And one of the strategies, as we're discussing, and we're going to show you when we talk about NNT, is can you accurately detect those changes? Okay? I repeat, for an attacker to succeed, if they manage to come on your database server, for them to succeed, they have to change something. And your strategy must be, can I detect that unauthorized malicious change in time so that I can make sure I can revert it and I know what has changed? If you don't, and the attacker becomes permanent in your systems, you have lost the battle. So you must be on the front foot. Just to recap, one of the things we do, and this is kind of a flagship course, we talk about change, we talk about how do you build a cyber security, cyber resilient organization. Do we have any questions? I'm just looking at all the questions. Mark, or Andrew, do we have any questions from the audience?
I think we might, well, I think we do, but I think some of these are going to be covered by some of the things that I'm going to say. So what we might do is just have a refresher of the sort of questions for the entire presentation right at the end, because some of those may be covered by what I'm about to say anyway. So we may well be doubling up.
Okay, excellent.
All right. Okay, well that was great, thanks, Amar, and plenty of sobering stuff there. In fact, some of the sort of fairly awkward questions you asked there, I would imagine will be a bit of a challenge to most of us, and I guess that's the whole sort of nature of cybersecurity, that it is a 24/7. You know, the attackers are relentless, the exposure is relentless, and as you've highlighted, you know, even the internal threat is significant. Great. Well, I'm going to we'll come back to Amar at the end when we're going to cover the Q&A, but right now I'm gonna take over and share that out. So right, quick radio check. You can see my screen now that I've changed it.
Yes.
That's great. All right,
Yeah,
terrific. So good. Well, I'm the guy without a turban, let alone a blue one, over on the right-hand side, and I should have updated that. We've just done a round instigated by Lulu, who runs our marketing, and he's obviously very good and very in tune with all of this, saying that we should have up-to-date pictures. I'm quite attached to that one. That was taken quite a while ago. I won't tell you exactly when, but we went to a new office we just opened just in the sort of Washington area, Virginia state, and the premises, it was like a managed office, but it was an old bank, and weirdly they'd left this, I mean, just the sort of scrap metal alone of this sort of what looks like a stainless steel safe was in there, you know, big chunky, proper bank vault, proper bank safe. So it was too much of an open goal to avoid the sort of most linear, sort of most cheesy security equals big locks and keys. So I see your lighthouse, Amar, and raise you a traditional vault and safe for my picture. Okay, well this is us, for those of you who don't know. So we're NNT. I'm based in the UK, as you can probably tell, and Amar's right. It really is hot. I mean, the people in South Africa or across the other African countries, and where Lulu is in the south of Australia, they don't know what hot is, do they, Amar? Until they've been to England in August during a heat wave. It's 34 degrees Celsius. Can you believe that?
Yes, it's absolutely terrible. Absolutely.
It's yeah, but we're not going to let it beat us. We're gonna carry on. So, but I'm here in the UK. We do most of our development work here in the UK, but we have offices in the US, in Australia. We have another office in Malaysia as well for Asia Pac support. And it's what we do is all about underpinning, automating the essential security controls, in particular configuration management, breach detection, change control. And change control is the main thing I'm going to talk about today, in line with some of the things that Amar has just highlighted for us. We're experts in vulnerability management, secure configuration guidance. We've been a certified CIS vendor for about 7 years now, longer than pretty much anybody else in that club. And it means that the configuration analysis, the vulnerability assessment that we're able to provide within our technology is literally second to none, because it comes not just from the manufacturers that contribute to the CIS project, but from security researchers, white hat hackers, anyone who's had any experience of breaches that have succeeded or have been attempted, and that sort of positive feedback of taking that knowledge and turning it into an effective vulnerability management strategy, generally through configuration guidance. You're in good company. You know, we literally have reach right across the world. Strong sectors are us as sort of the technology sectors. You can see people like IBM, HP, DXC rely on our technology to provide the underpinnings for their managed security services. So you can, no better reference or recommendation than IBM Security using our technology for what they do. But then, right across major industries, pretty much anything where there's a compliance driver, a governance, or need to demonstrate and really absorb the sort of doctrine of secure control frameworks and operating security in everything they do, which is why people like the US Army uses Lockheed Martin, security defense contractors as much as the big tech providers. So we're a pretty expert partner, and as Andrew mentioned, that partnership with Blue Turtle is really paying off as we're able to get better coverage and better exposure in their markets. Okay, so a little bit, Mark gave us an update on some of these that I reference on these slides, and it's sometimes there is this sort of shock fatigue, or people get not quite deaf, but certainly sort of insulated against the impacts of some of these really big breaches that resonate around the industry. But they really are important. I mean, you do get a bit numb to yet another big breach. What else is new? But these are really, really important lessons, because when we understand how these breaches happened, let's face it, some of the best resourced and also most scrutinized, all these big organizations will have QSAs for PCI auditing. They'll have partners who want audit scrutiny of their security practices, and yet they are still being caught. The problem they've got in that being the bigger, better resourced organizations is that they're perhaps more of a obvious target. They have more people. They have more people opening attachments, clicking on links, more people to be subject to sort of socially engineered phishing attacks or some attacks. So, the higher the profile, the more the people, the more exposed you are, the better resourced you are. But still, as we're seeing, that's no guarantee for success. I'm just talking about WannaCry. I mean, it's kind of topical. We're all under attack from a sort of far more deadly, sort of invisible enemy at the moment, and everyone keeps safe. But that concept of a cyber global pandemic, we saw that 2017 WannaCry, and it's still, although it's a few years on from that kind of makes it more important. The fact that we were all sat here 3 years ago, sort of really surveying the devastation. I mean, in the UK in particular, it's unfortunately our health service was infiltrated, was subject to WannaCry. Hospitals were shut down, operations were cancelled, and God forbid that happens at this point in time when health infrastructures are under sort of more stress than normal, because you really are getting into a life and death situation. But the point of it is that even though we all knew about WannaCry, WannaCry touched, well, as it shows there, hundreds of thousands of victims spread right across the world. Everyone knew about it. Everyone was talking about it. And yet we're still here, and we're still having breaches. We're still getting attacked. And it largely comes back to something, when WannaCry hit, it was a known vulnerability. The exploit that was used, which made WannaCry so bad, that sort of lateral worm capability, the Eternal Blue exploit, that was known about. Okay, it had only been known about for a month or a couple of months, really, but there was time. Vulnerability assessment technology knew about the risk of this exploit, and we had time to react. And yet, clearly, even in National Health Services in the UK and so on and so forth. That wasn't enough. So the message really is that, you know, security is great and available, but without the operation and without the real adherence, take this stuff seriously, the risk still exists. So come to the cybersecurity, but why is it still happening? Why is there still as many breaches happening in 2020 as there's ever been? Well, ironically for me, I think, cybersecurity is seen as one of the fastest moving. It's one of the, the most innovative sectors for IT, and it's seen as always breaking new ground. But ironically, there is an argument to say that it's actually lagging behind. The breach stats kind of back that up. There's not an especially great picture of cybersecurity vendors having won the war. And I think the reality is that, as fast as cybersecurity moves, sort of IT operational, IT service management, IT delivery technologies are kind of moving faster and in different directions. We're all embracing the sort of microservices container world. That makes IT better because it's even more agile. People use these terms agile, but container starts within milliseconds. Virtual machines, let alone physical machines, let alone legacy platforms. People still using AIX systems, AS400s. There's too many of them out there where a restart takes minutes or hours if you're lucky. These containers are up and running in milliseconds, and the advantages of that, the added performance, the added scalability, and the ability to stop and start, patch on the fly, improve services, more quickly than ever before, literally in the blink of an eye, means that the matched agility of security is even further behind than before. I think that the container world, something like 75% of global organizations are going to be running some form of containerized application, 75% in the next couple of years. So it's just too big to ignore, but it presents its own challenges, and not least the fact that within traditional sort of enterprise or mid-level IT organization that we deal with, the fact is that container and sort of cloud applications won't just replace everything overnight, or even with a couple of years runway. There'll still be as many sort of legacy platforms, on-premises data centers, traditional hosted environments, as well as sort of perhaps more public cloud or container organizations. And despite that sort of spread and speed of change, we're still stuck with kind of the same technology, vulnerability scanners. That's still the right way to do vulnerability assessments. There's something like 140,000 known vulnerabilities that have been catalogued and documented. And, running a thorough scan to ensure that they don't exist, let alone the sort of more tricky, the sort of configuration management, the sort of adherence to a baseline, the hardened build standard that we all need within an organization. Auditing systems to ensure compliance and vulnerability-free statuses. Traditionally, that takes hours, and the problem with an intensive scan means you can't do it when business services are being delivered. It's too risky. There's too much resource needed. So, everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone runs their scans, once a month, over the weekend, overnight on a Sunday, whatever the quietest day of the week is. And, you juxtapose that with containers being updated, microservices being changed, configuration, infrastructure as a service, changes being rolled out. There's a big gap between the two of these extremes. So I think if in anything, although we're better at security, the technology we've got is better, the goalposts have moved. The the infrastructure we have, the applications we have are even more tricky to benchmark and contain and control, really. So, in some respects, you can say, security controls really aren't necessarily keeping pace. Something's got to change and something's got to move within this environment. Let's take a look at, what we've got today. The traditional change management process is looks a little bit like this. There's a bit of animation going on there, but what we're faced with from an operational standpoint is that traditional service desk, submit an RFC, change advisory board. We do lots of checks and balances, work out when the least bad time is to implement that change. How are we going to back out? How are we going to roll out if things don't go to plan? And that's pretty much the extent of a change management process today. If it is used, most organizations we speak to, even the mature ones, they still have plenty of what they call sort of business as usual change. It's change that takes place anyway. It's change that is considered in the sort of balance of risk versus necessity. Changes still happen, and they're just sort of rolled up once a week. Somebody reviews those changes and does some sort of really pretty cursory, perfunctory analysis of the changes. The concept, the genuine, scholars of this will say that there should be a QA testing, a post-implementation review where somebody else sits down, looks at the changes that were implemented and ensures they're okay. In reality, and we all know this, really what this comes down to is, is it still working? Can you still log onto it? Does it look like it's still working? And that's about the extent of the testing that we'll do for this. And then, of course, we wait for the monthly vulnerability scans to come. The Qualys scan kicks off, once a week if it's a particularly critical system, or once a month if it's a more general purpose system. And then we get into sort of patching and drift management at that stage. And if we've got the point is if we've got that little visibility or scrutiny of the sort of known and expected changes, then what's going on with the unexpected, unplanned changes, breach activity, the sort of thing that Amar was referencing, that you get these changes embedded deep within systems, firewalls, VPN servers, where either the things aren't updated, they're not being patched, or credentials aren't being updated sufficiently frequently, holes are left in firewalls, and you could be subject to a breach. And very often when you look into these big headline breaches, they persist for months and months and months. Data can be stolen, ever deeper incursions into the IT infrastructure can take place as more credentials are gathered, more knowledge is gathered about the infrastructure, and some of the worst data breaches have happened because they've been allowed to be in place for weeks and weeks or even months. So what we advocate, I've got a dodgy animation going on here again, which has taken me a bit by surprise. But we've got an alternative, which is really binding in more of the sort of security priorities with operational. So instead of just operating the traditional change management process and then letting the security guys sort of clean up after us, weeks or months later, the concept here is that, we should, change control means just that we actually control changes, anything that is being done which could introduce vulnerabilities, could make us more prone to attack. And also the converse of that, the greater the grasp we have of the planned and intended changes, that also means we've got a much better grasp of the unexpected, because we're better able to differentiate between the two, which I'll talk about in a moment. But you know, you're probably groaning at this stage because I've taken something that you know, was already over bureaucratic. People resented it. People don't like the change management process, and our solution is we'll add in even more steps and make it even more bureaucratic. Well, that's not what we're really saying here. The things that are highlighted in sort of yellow and green there, these are automated steps. So these things take place without you needing to do anything more than just run your change management process as usual. And in fact, even if you're the sort of organization that does more of this kind of business as usual approach to change management, you make you know, certain changes, you make them, you know, patches. They're rolled out every week. Sometimes the patches don't actually show up until the machines are being rebooted, because they're sort of, you know, more traditional platforms running sort of monolithic applications. So we can't quite predict when those changes are going to show up. So we just let them run their natural course, and then we sort of audit those, you know, at the end of the week. Even if you're an organization that works like that, or you have a lot of unplanned change, you're still sort of striving for the sort of ultimate discipline. This still works, because actually these steps can be run in any order. And the whole concept, there's a few key things that go on in this, and there's actually a case study that we'll talk about at the end of this. The idea here is that when changes are approved, we automatically capture that knowledge within our change control system. In the NNT case, that's NNT Change Tracker, which is able to integrate with those service management systems, grab the details of the RFC, and then we're getting somewhere, because if we've got something like Change Tracker or change control technology, we've already got the visibility of changes as they happen. Now what we've got is the knowledge of when we have planned changes happening to specific applications or machines. And you might even have, and it's an opportunity with Change Tracker, also graft in a change manifest, so an actual blueprint of what those changes will look like when they land. And that way, in this instance, the reason why this is closed loop is because then when those changes are actually implemented and invoked, you've got something that is going to be watching. It's going to grab those changes. It's going to verify, do they match with an RFC? If so, I'm going to correlate those, line them up in the service desk. So now we've got, you know, what was supposed to happen with what actually happened. We actually have visibility of that. But we can take that even further. As we capture those changes, we can do analysis of them. So if we have a change manifest, if we know what a patch looked like. So, for example, if we deploy patches in a sort of pre-rollout system, which you know, most do, and obviously, you know, standard practice says you should test patches. We already know what the changes look like that are associated with that patch. And we can take that image, that blueprint of when this particular patch hits these systems, these are the changes that should happen. And in closed loop change control, that's what we're automating. We're grabbing the changes and we're saying, yes, we did get the changes expected. And of course, the flip side of that over here on the far left-hand side is that anything left over, anything that doesn't match an RFC or doesn't match change manifest or isn't considered safe, we still have visibility of that because we've got the change control system capturing every change. They can be logged as incidents. They can be captured separately. And, you know, as Amar said earlier, you know, whether this is real time or near real time, just having the visibility and being able to act and have a process for dealing with both planned and unplanned change means that your security defenses are, you know, exponentially improved, because finally you know when an attack happens, you know when breach activity is going on. You can shore up operational changes. A bad operational change may not leave you prone to attack, but it could take down a business service or mean that that's not working properly. So this has got so much value in it. And the great news is that there's automation to deliver this sort of as a lights out operation. Okay, so just a quick summary of some of those points. So what we're saying is that we're able to, once we're able to sort of automatically grab changes as they happen, then we can do this validation. That's really, really important. We can actually assess and verify changes that will happen. We can reduce change noise. If in that patching example, which is typically responsible for the most change in any organization, if you take your Red Hat Linux estate, you've got 500 systems all running similar applications. The patches that hit the OS, the platform, are going to be similar. Okay, they're going to be the same patches for the same classes of platform. If we review change on one system, we've effectively reviewed changes on 500 because they should all be the same. If we automate that blueprint, that verification, all we're left over at the end of the whole cycle is just the unexpected or unplanned changes, including breaches, if that were to happen. So tons and tons of value can come out of this. And, ultimately, with automation means that the inertia is reduced. We talk a lot about IT inertia, that sort of lag, that sort of fact that you need to wait a month for a scan, you then need to wait a week before it's reviewed, you then need to wait another week before remediation work takes place, and that horrendously slow, laborious service can be shortcut and brought much, much closer to the demands of the business, which is ever quicker, more agile deployment. It all goes under the banner. I mean, when NNT talk about this sort of whole concepts and methodology, we have a thing called SecureOps, which is really sort of melding together these concepts that I've talked about, the idea of closed loop change control, the idea of breach detection, the idea of validation of planned change activity, and that comes into play. And what we've got here, and the cool thing is where's the proof of this? Where's the evidence? I'm going to talk a little bit about a successful case study where Blue Turtle worked with NNT to provide exactly that, closed loop change control for Standard Bank Namibia in here, when the other Standard Bank businesses are quickly following into line. This is a published case study, so Standard Bank themselves, Holger has signed off on this, so it's something you can get from the Blue Turtle website as well as the NNT site. But it's a really, really powerful story because you're talking about a not insignificant IT environment. Banks take, not surprisingly, security extremely seriously. So to have something that actually transforms their ability to operate change control, it's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty eye-opening story to work through. And really, I just want to talk about the quote that we got back about this, because this really encapsulates, the theory that I've just covered in the previous slides. It's actually happening and has actually delivered value to the Standard Bank team. They have a much better understanding of the changes happening in the environment. They're detecting all changes, and that's really given them the sort of peace of mind that they're finally sort of in control. They would know if they have a breach, and equally their sort of operational standards are far more in lockstep with security. So it's great to have sort of published evidence of here's the theory and here's the proof, and anyone who has a compliance project or a security mission, or just if Amar sowed some seeds earlier, some of those questions he was asking, if you think, well, yeah, we really could do some help with that, talk to the Blue Turtle team, and they can get us involved to assist. But really, I think that's the wrap up of the session for us. I think we've still got a little bit of time for Q&A, which I think Lulu, we're going to get Amar back on, and I think Lulu is going to sort of hit us with any questions that are outstanding. But thanks for your time. Thanks for hearing us out, and be pleased to follow up after the event.
Thanks very much, Kedge.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you very much. Thanks. Sorry, Lulu. Maybe just to kick off the Q&A, Mark. I mean, I certainly have a couple of questions that spring to mind. So maybe as a start to it, I could pick your brain and shoot those to you before we should get the audience questions out.
Okay, all right.
Just from my side, I mean, in order to get the kind of change control that you've outlined in the deck and some of the scenarios that you've walked us through, with this, what kind of size of organization is this a fit for, or is it only relevant to larger scale infrastructures?
So it's a great question, and it's one we're always a little bit wary of, because we sort of wheel out this. We talk about the spread of platforms. We talk about, I said it there. Let's imagine you've got 500 Red Hat Linux systems. Well, a lot of our customers don't have anything like that. They're single IT manager operations. They're still worried about being breached, and they still have a security priority. And the cool thing is that this does work still in smaller organizations, as well as sort of banks and IBM security services. The IBM security services, I mean, they're managing something like, I think it's about 40 or 50,000 endpoints on behalf of customers with a change tracker system. So that's sort of one end of the spectrum. We then have others where they're just literally covering a few, but security maintained. And because it's automated, whether you're using a service desk or not, the same principles apply. And I kept on talking about that business as usual process. We have plenty of organizations where they say, well, look, we're a small team. We kind of know when we're going to do patching. We don't have a change advisory board. We don't operate plan changes. That's great too, because what Change Tracker will do is still expose all the changes. It will still assign those to your regular scheduled patching window, so you know roughly which ones are likely to be patches, which ones aren't. We have Fast Cloud, which I didn't talk about, but that's an automated way of reviewing file changes. We can verify whether at least files you're getting changes for are whitelisted. They're known clean and safe. So there's a huge amount of automation we can bring even to smaller shops, which will improve their security.
Fantastic. I think just one more from my side, if you don't mind, and I'm sure it's on a couple of people's lips, and that leads to something that you mentioned during the presentation in terms of vulnerability management. In terms of that, where would you see a theme tool fitting?
Yeah, it's a good point, because I mean the classic sort of makeup. If you look at things like I don't know, CIS controls, for in the top 6, the first priority 6 controls, log analysis is one of those, and it's a nice technology in that it's sort of unattended. You just fire all your logs into a scene system. It does some analysis, kind of tells you if you've got a problem or not. The issue is that scene systems don't have that context that the sort of change control system will have. Change control system knows when changes are going to happen. It also knows what the sort of before and after states look like, and is able to give you that far more detail. So change control, call it what you will, integrity monitoring, file integrity monitoring, that type of sort of analysis technology is a better tool for the job. What we do with NNT, when I talk about SecureOps, we actually bundle elements of all of those key technologies together. So we take vulnerability management, sort of vulnerability scanning type technology, with change control and with logging, because frankly, all of those are essential, and they're all key security control. Don't know, for Mars, I shouldn't be hogging just because I was talking last, I shouldn't really be hogging the all the answers, but perhaps I'll leave the next one to Amar. How about that?
Yeah, and I guess let's get some of the questions out from the audience. I'll take a little bit of a back seat now. Lulu, do you have a list of the questions that have come through on the panel there for us?
Yes, the questions are coming through. So how do you better influence management towards getting buy-in if they are less interested in understanding risks we are involved with as ICT security professionals?
How much time do we have for that answer? To put it very, very bluntly, I think you need to focus on a key word, which is breach notification. I think many countries around the world are adopting this particular term, data breach notification. And what that basically translates into, if you don't know you have been attacked and that you've had a data breach within a certain amount of reasonable time, guess what? You ain't going to have a business because you are going to be fined heavily. So to me, that's an easier starting point to discuss with management. Do we want to be fined or do we not want to be fined? And actually, why do we need to invest in something like change management or the ability to automatically track malicious changes? Is because we will know that malicious actors are trying or just have already got in, right? And we will be able to hopefully stop a massive data breach. That's a quick soundbite.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Amar. There was another question as well. I think it's pretty much been answered, but is there a specific tool or system that you can use to detect unauthorized changes in reference to the previous presentation? Any that you can recommend? Tej?
Well, I don't know if I'm allowed to answer that one, as as a tool vendor, somebody who spends their lives manufacturing. Well, yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I can certainly talk generically. I mean, I suppose the key thing about change control and that closed loop change control is that it's actually unique to us. We're still the first and only vendor to have an officially certified ServiceNow integration, as well as a Remedy integration, as well as a Cherwell integration, as well as some others that I've forgotten about. But it's that ability to sort of slot in, and as I said, it's that sort of two-way thing. It's taking the knowledge of an RFC, when a change is supposed to happen, what are they supposed to look like, and then also having the ability on the flip side to say, well, okay, here are the changes that have taken place, and here's how they match up. Here's how they validate against what was expected. And if you think about it, in a well-run, tight, secure IT operation, the only changes that should happen should be, the routine patches once a month, once a week, if you're super hot on these things, and application updates, as well as sort of general, adds, moves, changes, new users and so on. But you should, if you had control of all that, then anything taking place outside of it, whether it's the sort of thing that Amar described earlier on with these sort of leftover bad changes, people with admin rights but still making mistakes, let alone the sort of malicious attacker deliberately trying to infiltrate systems, we would have such a significantly better grip on security. And the sort of thing that you always read about, the sort of mean time, average time to detect a breach, Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report, it's always, I think actually it's reduced this year. It's 160 days rather than 179 days, but that's still months and months where a breach has been in place. And they also always publish the same figure, which is that data is exfiltrated within the first few minutes of a breach taking place. So you're hopelessly out of step if you're operating the old way. So yes, I would say NNC SecureOps, especially Change Tracker, would be my recommendation. But talk to Blue Turtle, because they're the independents in all of this, rather than the biased manufacturer that I am.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. Maybe we've got time for one more question as well. So we've got, is change control different for cloud system? Is change control different for cloud systems than for on-premises data center setups?
Conceptually, no. I mean, there are some technical differences because obviously in the cloud scenario, and particularly if it's a sort of container, Kubernetes or one of these cloud formation type setups, there is that software defined infrastructure as well. So there's sort of more configuration settings that exist in the cloud scenario than perhaps not abstracted out. So where you've got physical platforms or even virtualized platforms, you kind of got a natural segregation between the platform and the application or the software that's installed, whereas in the cloud scenario, it's all software defined, it's all configuration based. We actually cover it in the same way. Actually, the more sort of software, the more sort of API or command accessible or file integrity accessible that the configuration data is, it suits us better. But for us as a vendor and us as a product, makes no difference at all. You can mix and match these things, even have hybrid setups for our take.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark, once again. So I think we'll wrap up the Q&A now and move on to next actions, if you're able to discuss those. Mark? Any unanswered questions, we'll respond to the participants after the event. We're just conscious of time.
Yeah, no, that's great. We sort of use up the time, but there's I think there was a final slide, which was just that there were some resources to give everybody, as well as the lunch voucher. So plenty of freebies from today.
Yeah, we'll be emailing all the attendees with these helpful resources, 5 complimentary change tracker licenses plus a technical consultation, free to keep, Greenbone vulnerability scanner, and the SecureOps on-demand demo will also provide you with access to that.
Thanks, Lulu. Yeah, and everyone in the audience, just before we wrap up, I'd like to thank you for your time. If you can get hold of us, I'm sure you've got the details on the meeting invite, either via the invite or email me directly, which is andrewp@blueturtle.coza, and we'll be happy to set up the online demo for you guys and get you a copy of the change tracker and the vulnerability scanner. Yeah, we look forward to hearing from you. Lulu, thank you very, very much for setting up this session. Mark and Amar, thank you very much for your insights. It's been great to have you. And to the audience, thank you very, very much for attending. Your lunch voucher should be in your inbox as we speak.